everyone, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and this week's unit overview is going to cover the Valentine Tank Company for the Soviets from the Soviet Bagration book. So this is British Lend Lease sent to the Soviets to help them out during their trying times against the Germans. The Valentine's an interesting tank. It's really a mid-war and earlier tank that was pressed into service by the Soviets because they just needed more armor on the field. You can take the Valentine two different ways in the Bagration book. You can take them as a tank company, or you can take them as a hero tank company. So the each one of those kind of offers you a little bit different options as far as the numbers and the motivation and skill. But obviously everything else is going to be the same. So why don't we start by taking a look at the stat card. So we have the Valentine Company here. We've got a hit on 3+, which is very typical for Soviets. Front armor 6, side armor 5, top armor 1. If that sounds familiar, it's the same exact armor that a T-34 has. So this is, although I hate to say well armored, it's armored like a medium tank in late war. The speed is tactical of 8 inches, terrain dash 10, cross country 14, and a road dash of 16 with a 3+ cross check. These guys are slow. 8 inches is pretty slow, particularly considering when you can get T-34s that have a tactical speed of 12. So it's almost like a third faster. The interesting thing about the Valentine is that you can take upgraded version. So you can either take a 2-pounder or a 6-pounder. So the 2-pounder version has a 2-pound gun, range 24, halted rate of fire 2, moving rate of fire 1, anti-tank 7, 4+ firepower, and no HE, so it's not that good against infantry and gun teams. But that one does have a machine gun, so you can toss out 3 dice of machine guns, whether you're moving or halted. The other version is the 6-pound version, which gives up its machine gun, but gives us a 28-inch range, 2 halted, 1 moving, anti-tank 10, 4+ firepower, no HE, no MG, and overworked. So that gun has, typically the more things you see in the notes in Team Yankee over here, the worse the gun is. So no HE obviously is what we'd said about the 2-pounder. It's worse against infantry and gun teams. The overworked gun means if it's moving and shooting, it's another +1 to hit as well. And no MG means no MGs. So that's a pretty tough pill to swallow, but it does. Anti-tank 10 is better than the anti-tank you'll find on the vanilla T-34, and overworked is the same penalty for moving and firing. So it does have a little bit better main armament than a bog standard T-34. The hero, let's talk about motivation. It has a confident 4+ with a not one step back last stand of 3+, and then a skill of 5+, which is pretty standard for the kind of the standard tank companies. Then you have the hero tank company stats, which are the same exact thing, except they have a confident 4+ minus the no one step back special rule. So they actually fail their last stand more often. They're kind of worse at that. But to make up for that and make them much better, they have a skill of 4+, and they have a tactics rating of 3+. And a 3+ tactics rating is helpful here because as those are things like movement orders. So if you do get a blitz off, your 8-inch moving tank can in essence move 12 inches that turn, or something along those lines. Or move 4 inches and fire without the overworked penalty. The main difference as far as construction of those two units is the Hero Valentine Company, you can only take up to 3 of them. And then the regular Valentine Company, you can take up to 7 of them. Normally, you can only replace half of your Valentines with the 6-pound option, and that's rounding down. So if you take 3, only 1 of them can be a 6-pounder. If you take 7, only 3 of them can be 6-pounders. So I built up a unit of 7 so I could play with them both ways, and it's been a pretty interesting experience. But before I share that with you, let's talk a little bit about your opponents and what you might be facing on the battlefield. So, Valentines versus Panzer IV. So the Panzer IV is front armor 6, anti-tank 11. And you are not that good against that. And to be honest, it's only going to get worse. So your 6-pounders, they have a decent chance against a Panzer IV. The 6-pounder gun, like this guy here, he anti-tank 10 versus front armor 6 means if the German player is hit, he needs to roll a 4 to equal and a 5 or higher to bounce. So a 1, 2, or 3 will penetrate that Panzer IV with no problem. But the downside is, for every 6-pounder you've got in your formation, you're going to have a 2-pounder as well. And the 2-pounder's anti-tank of 7 versus front armor 6 means that you can't penetrate the Panzer IV from the front. The best you can do is equal. If the Panzer IV rolls a 1 for its armor save, you can equal it and possibly bail him out. But it's not guaranteed because it has a 4+ firepower. So the 2-pounders are virtually useless in a standard fight like this. Only your 6-pounders have really any chance to penetrate the Panzer IV. Now, in the T-34 video, I talked about knife fighting as a solution for you. Knife fighting really doesn't work as well with the Valentines because they're so slow. They only have an 8-inch tactical move, so it's a lot harder to get into that position. Or I should say, it's a lot easier for the Germans to avoid getting themselves found in that position. Now, it only gets worse when you face a Stug. If you're facing a Stug, your 2-pounders are useless. Anti-tank 7 versus front armor 7, you can't even equal. It will always bounce. Your 9-pounders, your 6-pounders, I wish I had a 9-pounder. Your 6-pounders, anti-tank 10 versus front armor 7, it's okay. I mean, it's what a Sherman would normally do. Sherman has better firepower, though. So basically, the Stug would have to roll a 1 or 2 to fail, 3 to equal, 4+ to bounce it. So only 33% of the time are you going to penetrate a Stug firing at it with your 6-pounders. And then it's a 4+ firepower test, so that's 50% of the time on top of that you actually destroy him instead of bailing him out. So that's something to consider. Now, you might be asking, well, what's the use of these tanks? Well, if you go up against a Tiger from the front, you can't hurt it. I guess you could conceivably bail it out if it rolls a 1 on its armor roll, but you can't destroy it from the front, and even from the sides, the 2-pounders can't hurt it. So, like I said, what's the point of these tanks? Why take these tanks over T-34s or anything else? And I think the main thing, and perhaps the only reason, besides theming an army to a particular unit or something, is the cost. 7 T-34s cost 21 points. 7 Valentines cost 11 points. So that the 7 Valentines are 10 points cheaper than an equivalent number of T-34 85s. You only get 3 of the 6-pounders in a 7-tank unit, but it's still something that lighter tanks like Panzer IVs really still can't ignore them. Stugs want to be careful around them. Tigers and Panthers could pretty much ignore you, but what can you expect for tanks that are kind of that cheap? So really, they are a good tank for the cost, for what you're paying for them. 7 tanks for 11 points. If you're building if you're building a lot of infantry companies or infantry battalions, Valentines might be a good way to get some armor on there. The Valentine, the hero version of the Valentine company, can be decent in assault. Yeah, the gun has no HE, but you might be able to crush your opponents and do it inexpensively. The other thing to consider is these are Lend Lease. So if you're building a themed Lend Lease army, this is obviously a unit you might want to include. They are pretty cool tanks. They look cool. They're interesting because at least I went with the box art on how to paint them. They didn't paint them green. They just kept them the colors that they got from the British. So it's interesting that, I still put the Soviet star on them, but they are still in a kind of British paint scheme, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it breaks up your army a little bit. You're not just an ocean of green. You've got another splash of color in there. Granted, it's tan. It's not a flashy splash of color, but it's not green, and that's something to be said. So, Valentines in and of themselves, when you look at the tank itself, it's bad. I mean, particularly the 2-pounder. The 6-pounder is better. It is better, but it doesn't have a machine gun. So all it has is that 6-pounder with the no HE and no, an overworked rule. So if you're fighting an infantry-based army and you have lots of infantry coming at you, this unit isn't that great either, because only the 2-pounders can shoot machine guns. And if you shoot your main gun, it's going to be one harder to hit them. So if you're shooting at 4+ to hit Germans, it's a 5+ to hit if you stand still, and it's a 6+ to hit if you're moving, because the gun's overworked. And it doesn't have any machine guns, which are usually your fallback. If infantry are attacking you, you move out and machine gun them. So there might be a case to say take all 2-pounders and skip the 6-pounder. If you're going to go against infantry, that might be the way to do it, because you can maximize your machine guns. But honestly, if that's the boat, I would look at taking a unit of T-70 tanks, because I think they get you a little bit more bang for your buck as far as machine guns versus infantry. So again, Valentines are a very optional unit, and something that I don't necessarily recommend for Soviet players starting out. If you're a Soviet player and you're starting out, you wonder where to go, don't go to the Valentine first. And that's my opinion, because you will be underwhelmed by their performance on the tabletop, and they are a support unit at best. So keep that in mind. They're much better Soviet tanks to look at before you turn your attention to the Valentine. I did it because I'm somewhat of a completist. I wanted to have this option to include it in battle reports for you guys, so you could see them actually in action, and just try out something different. But I would not consider this an essential unit like buying T-34s would be. This is a sideline unit that you might occasionally pull out for friendly games only. I guess I'd be interested to see if there's any competitive list that has Valentines in it. I would probably say they would not show up there, but I've been shocked before by winning lists. So there you go, guys. That is the Valentine Lend Lease tank for the Soviets in Bagration. Again, the rating I'd give these guys is pretty low. They're not needed in most Soviet lists, but they are a cool addition to have. They are something that reminds us of the history that the Allies did send lots of things to the Soviets so that they could use, and the Valentine was one of those things. So that's pretty cool. And so you might build a historical list that emphasizes that. As always, we appreciate you watching. Do let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have you had much success with the Valentine in battles? Has anyone taken Valentines to tournaments? And if so, how'd you do? I'd love to hear in the comments. I love chatting with you guys down there. Please do consider giving us a like and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook at All Miniatures Great and Small. Also, click that bell here on YouTube to receive notification when we publish new content. If you like our Flames of War content, please do check out our Patreon. Their patrons get access to a battle report exclusive to them every month. And we have lots of Eastern Front battles on the Patreon, and a couple of them include the mighty Valentine. And I think at least one of them goes pretty well for him. So you might want to check it out on there. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.